everybody. Welcome to the fourth and final workshop. I am so sad that this is our final workshop, but I'm so excited for you all to jump into this final workshop. We've got a lot to cover this evening. We've got an amazing guest speaker for you this evening. I think you're going to really enjoy this. Now, this workshop is all about how to make the most out of that first internship. How do you make the most of that first internship or first job? Maybe you're jumping into a full-time job, you're a senior, you're graduating. Maybe you're hopefully jumping into an internship. Even if you're not jumping into an internship, maybe you're working on a part-time job. That's okay too. This workshop is all about how can you make the most out of that first opportunity so that you can really set yourself apart. By the way, if you have a part-time job and you don't have an internship, there are plenty of ways that you can go about setting yourself apart in that part-time job that could lead to internships down the road. Seriously, do not settle and do not sell yourself short for the network that you could create from any particular opportunity. I know that I could tell you that back in the day when I was a server and bartender, I met plenty of people that ultimately opened up doors for opportunities that I ended up taking advantage of later. You never know who you will meet, even in the jobs you think are not your main thing. It's understandable, but leverage it. Don't ever write any potential connection off. So, as you all know, my name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. This workshop's going to be about 50 minutes long. Please ask any questions you have. If you have any questions in the comments section, as you all know, I'm gonna ask 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Your job is to answer them within 24 hours of this workshop going live. I don't necessarily know exactly what the questions are going to be. I always prompt them based on our guest speaker. Sometimes I'll slip in an intro question during this segment here. It just depends how I'm feeling for the day. So I'm so excited for you all to jump in, learn from our guest this evening. I'm so excited to learn your answers to the questions that we ask you, and I'm so excited to engage with you all. Now, I really want to set the expectations. As you all know, you're not going to get an internship handed to you on a silver platter. That's just not how this program works. Now, by the way, have students landed opportunities at Google, major investment banks, major engineering firms, major marketing firms? Absolutely, happens all the time. And have they done that as a result of meeting with their mentor, taking advantage of the things that they've learned through this program? Yeah, absolutely. But if you think this is going to get handed to you on a silver platter, I think you already know by now that's just not how this program works. You have to work for the things that you get. Now, this platform can be a springboard for you to get to where you want to be. Leverage this as an opportunity to really launch your early career path. Absolutely, yes, this is something that can really do make a huge impact on you getting to where you want to be. But this is not a handout. This is not something that is just given to you. This program could be critical to you really setting yourself apart compared to your peers. Take advantage of it. I really think that you're going to enjoy what we have to say in this workshop this evening. Now, I really want to talk about the intentionality of feelings, because here's the thing. At the end of the day, how you make someone feel in a given moment is going to really impact how they feel about you down the line. So I want you to just take a quick moment on a piece of paper or on your phone. I want you to identify, how do you want other people to feel about you? So when you're going into that first job, that first internship, that first part-time job, how do you want your boss? How do you want your colleagues? How do you want your peers? How do you want other people to feel about you? Write it in the comment section. Write it down on a piece of paper. I want to know, how do you want other people to feel about you? Because that intentionality is so key. It is so key, because here's the thing. If you don't write this down, if you don't set out an intention for how you want other people to feel about you, they are going to perceive you in any which way that you may feel on that given day. And that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. If you're having an off day and you're thinking to yourself like, oh man, I'm having a rough day, you can let that spew onto other people. It happens all the time. And people come up with excuses for it. You might say, hey, my dog died earlier today, or I just found out my grandma's got cancer, having a rough day. And don't get me wrong, there's not an excuse for having a rough day, but you've got to be able to realize that as a professional, you've got to put on multiple different hats to get yourself in the zone to make the most out of it. So no matter what's going on with your world, you can't let your personal world affect your business world. And if you do, it's going to potentially negatively impact the way that other people feel about you. But if you set an intention right now about how you want other people to feel about you, you're going to put yourself in a much better situation. If you think to yourself, I want people to think about me as dependable and reliable and someone that's always upbeat, confident, and excited when it comes to work, It doesn't matter what's going on with your outside world. Even if the worst thing could have possibly happened in your outside personal world, if you set yourself an intention right now that that's how you want other people to feel about you, when you come into work, you're going to straighten yourself up because you've already identified, I don't want people to feel sad, bad, or like that I'm a charity case because I've got other things going on in my outside world. You want other people to feel like you are a rock, that you are someone that they can go to, that you are someone that's always showing up professionally. Boom. You will get yourself into the mindset ready to be successful. Now that leads to the 3 keys that we cover in every workshop for success in this mentor program, which is strategy, story, and state. And as I just said, it doesn't matter what's going on in your outside world. It doesn't matter what the state of the world is. If you are a rock, if you are someone that physically comes into a state conducive for being successful every single time, you will be successful. I promise you that. So I want to do right now is I want to get you into a state conducive for being successful. I want you to stand up and I want you to shake it loose. I want you to shimmy it out. I want you to let it go. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. On the count of 3, scream 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out. Let it loose. Let it go. You're getting yourself pumping. You're getting blood flowing to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself ready to be successful. The reason why that is so key is because no matter what is going on in your world, you can drive your emotions with your motions. Your motions drive your emotions, meaning that if you get out, you move, you do a power pose, you get crazy, you can get yourself in a state conducive for other people wanting to be around you. You can get yourself feeling good, even if you don't want to feel good. Even if you think to yourself, I just want to remorse for a little bit. I just want to be sad for a little bit. You can be sad on your own time, but when it comes to work time, you step your game up. And the way that you step your game up, you get your emotions and you turn them into positive emotions. I can tell you that right now. Even when you don't want to feel on your best self, your emotions can get yourself into an emotional state conducive for being successful, even if it's only for a temporary period of time. I promise you, your emotions, getting moving, getting running, getting going, getting just shaken out, will get yourself successful. And that will be a huge catalyst for you being successful on the job, standing apart from other people. Because everyone else is going to wonder, like, man, how are you able to stay upbeat, positive, just like a go-to person every single time while other people are taking sick days or just having off days? And you can tell, everyone can tell. It's because you are making an intention to be that way before you come into work every single day. It's critical. Now, the next key is your story. What's the story you tell yourself? Now, that's a big point of the intentionality. What is the story you tell yourself for why you're going to be successful? If you're telling yourself a negative story like, hey, you know what, I don't deserve to be here, I'm not qualified, I'm just honestly, I don't even know why I'm in the room. If that's the story you tell yourself, that is the outcome that will be perceived by other people. But if you tell yourself a story, man, I can do this, I can make an impact, I can learn from these people, I can engage, I can be the energetic person who does what it takes, works the hardest to get to where I need to be. If you come in with that mentality, you can be successful. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are you going to do to make sure that you set yourself apart from your peers? Now, there's a few things that we talk about with our guest speaker, but there's a few things that I would love to discuss with you right now. The first one is what is focal is causal. This is popularized by the work of Dr. Robert Cialdini. Essentially, what it means is that whatever is seen is perceived, which means that it is all optics. By that, I mean, if your supervisor, if your boss, if your CEO sees you showing up early for work, working hard on projects, taking initiative, they will attribute the success of the entire intern team to you. But if they see you on your phone, on social media, doing something lazy, just doing things that are not, like spreading gossip at the water cooler, not working when you should be working, anything that could be perceived as negative, if they see that, they will perceive that just as likely as they do the hardworking stuff. So it is really critical that whatever people see about you, whoever you want to make sure that you impress, that they see the type of person that you want to portray, and that they do not see the type of person you do not want to portray. You will think to yourself, man, I wonder how does XYZ person get promoted over another person? I can tell you how. It's that they are seen doing good work while the other people are not seen doing good work. Make sure that you're seen doing good work. In fact, what I always find the most interesting about this research of Dr. Robert Cialdini is its extrapolation to other areas of life. Specifically, as you know, I don't know if any of you all are holed up right now for coronavirus and sitting inside watching television, but what he's observed in his research is that when cameras, especially in police interrogations, are facing any particular person, whether that be the police officer or the suspect, when the camera is facing the person, one particular person, a jury is much more likely to attribute negative feelings towards that person if the camera is facing them. So if the camera is facing a suspect in an interrogation, the jury is much more likely to attribute guilt on the party of the suspect than they are to think that the cop is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually exist. However, flip it around. When the camera is facing the police officer, not the suspect, the likelihood that the jury is going to think that the cop, the police officer, is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually be essentially the guilt of the person who's under interrogation, it essentially increases substantially more. The point I'm trying to make is that when what people see is what they perceive. So at the end of the day, if God forbid you're ever in a police interrogation situation and you notice that the camera is rolling, at the best you want to make sure that the camera is side by side equally to you both, or not facing you and facing the police officer. It's crazy how much of an impact that has on how people perceive other people. But more importantly, as it pertains to the workplace, make sure that people see you doing good work and not see you doing bad work. It's not a tit for tat type of thing. One bad deed is about 10 good deeds worth. You have to really make sure that you're not seen doing anything bad, or you are going to be on the shit list of your supervisor. And that's not a place you want to be. So the next thing that I want to talk about is this theory called the next in line theory. Essentially what this says is that when somebody is talking or about to speak, their likelihood of retaining any information before or after their speech is very low. So if you know that your supervisor is about to give a presentation, or someone that you really look up to, maybe you are about to see a keynote speaker, you're thinking to yourself, I love this keynote speaker, I love what he or she has to say, I want to go up to him or her after their speech. Bad idea. Here's why. People, when they speak, are much more likely to think about what they just said if they just finished giving a speech, or what they're about to say if they're about to give a speech. Their likelihood of retaining any new information is very minimal. So therefore, you need to give the person you're trying to make a positive impression to a leeway period before you bring up new information to them, because that will increase the likelihood that your message is actually going to resonate in their mind. But if you come up to them right before a speech or right after a speech that they just gave or are about to give, their likelihood of remembering what you said, very low. So just something to keep in mind. This also applies to a boss who's giving a speech, any colleague that's giving a speech, anybody who's about to speak publicly for anything. Make sure you don't talk to them immediately before or afterwards, because they're not going to remember what you said. So the last thing that I want to touch on is this concept called matching and mirroring. This is a great key for building rapport in the workplace, especially for someone who's got negative body language. So I think we've touched on this before in the past, but you should not have your arms crossed when you're at the workplace. It conveys that you're closed off and that you're not open to learning new information. But there's a lot of people that have bad body language in the workplace. There's going to be a lot of people that will cross their arms to you. Can you cross back? The answer is yes. And I know this might sound crazy, but people feel a subconscious connection to others that they are similar to. And this can be in your mannerisms and your speed of speech. Not your dialect of speech, but your speed of speech. So if somebody has a very thick Southern accent and you try to emulate that Southern accent, but you don't actually have a Southern accent, they're going to sniff that out immediately. It's going to be perceived as inauthentic. But if someone's talking really quickly and you're saying, I'm going to work on that, boss, I'm going to make sure I get that done, I'm going to work on it right away, they're going to think to themselves like, man, here's a sense of urgency, someone who's really with it. That's awesome. But instead, if you respond by saying, yeah, boss, I will get to it, and I will make sure that I get those assignments complete, they're going to be thinking to themselves, what the heck is wrong with this kid? Like, what does he not like get it? The sense of urgency? It's crazy how your speed of speech is actually perceived so similar together. So if you notice that someone talks really quickly or really slowly, following their speed of speech, matching and mirroring their speed of speech can actually help you build rapport with them. The other key is other body language. So like I said, crossing your arms. If someone's playing with their chin, you can play with your chin. Don't try to be overly obvious about it, but you can do it subtly. So if someone's playing with their ear, you can play with your ear. And I know it may sound crazy, but you can try this with a friend who's never heard this before. Go up to them, see if they've got any mannerisms. Maybe they're using their hands like this a lot. Emulate those hand gestures, and then all of a sudden introduce a new gesture. All of a sudden, maybe start playing with your nose. It could be any gesture, honestly. Start playing with your nose. Do it. First, emulate their hand gestures for about 5 minutes. Then introduce a new gesture. Watch what happens. They're going to start playing with their nose. They're going to start emulating the new gesture that you have now introduced. It's crazy. It's fascinating how it works, but it builds rapport between other people in the work environment. I think those are some really critical tips for you to know. The last thing that I want to leave you with is the 30 and 90-day rule. The 30-day rule is for an internship. When you first get into an internship, this is, by the way, this was, by the way, a Fortune 500 CEO taught me this tip, and that was when you first go into an internship, meet with your supervisor and ask him or her the question, what did the best intern you ever have do to set themselves apart? On the very first day, ask that question. They're going to tell you exactly what they want you to do to set yourself apart. For the next 30 days, go ahead and do it. Don't complain. Don't ask questions. Don't share any professional goals you've got for yourself. Just go ahead, put your head down, work hard. After 30 days, you have built credibility with this person. You can then say, hey, boss, would you be open to having a conversation? I would love to share with you some of my professional goals. Boom. That's where you share some of your professional goals. That's where you say, hey, I'm interested in connecting with people in these areas or these types of fields or these types of industries. And because you've earned credibility, they will help you get there. Why? Because you've earned that credibility. But if on day one you ask for that and you've earned no credibility, they're not going to do it. Or if they do, they're going to only do it on a light version. You're not going to get the full force of how they could possibly help connect you. That is something that's really critical. 90-day rule is the exact same thing, but for a full-time job. You get a little bit longer to really build that credibility with your supervisor and your employer. So those are key tips. The last thing I want to just really mention is really starting to help you get into a routine. I know that the best way to learn anything is to actually teach it. So what I want you to do is I want you to find somebody. This could be a friend. It could be a peer. It could be a classmate. It could be anybody. Teach them something that you learned in this program. Teach them anything you learned in this program. We know that students who tell at least, we know that students who tell at least 20 people something that they learned in this program, that their likelihood of landing the job, the internship, getting to a graduate degree increases exponentially. We know that the more people a student tells, the more likely they're able to do that. What we've identified as 20 is that magic number. And this doesn't necessarily have to be you teaching them a full seminar of anything we taught. It could be literally you bringing up casually in conversation, like, hey, I learned about this thing called matching and mirroring. It's really fascinating. Boom, that's it. That's one person. Or multiple people if you're in a group. But what we've learned is that the more people you tell, the more likely you are actually going to retain this information, the more likely you are going to actually apply it into your professional life, and the more likely you are actually to achieve the goals you have set for yourself professionally. It's crazy how it works. It's a network effect. It really does make an impact. So I want to challenge you that after this workshop, you go out, you identify a friend, you teach them something you learned in this program, and its likelihood of sticking increases exponentially. I really want to challenge you to do that. I would really encourage you to be in the program next semester. You're going to get a new mentor. We're going to have new speakers. We're going to talk about new content. I think you're going to really enjoy it and really springboard your career into another level. I think you're going to really enjoy that. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of this workshop. I look forward to seeing you on the next part. Everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to talk about how to make the most out of our first job or internship. So we're students, we're in the middle of coronavirus. We're trying to figure out what the heck is going on here. How do we transition into this first internship? Or really, how can we put ourselves in the position to gain the kind of experience we want? So then when obviously all this crazy economic everything turmoil is done, we can put ourselves in the best position to land a job, land an internship, and make the most out of our careers. We've got an awesome guest this evening. His name is Mason Walker. Mason is the founder of a company called Audigy, but he's got a fascinating story. Mason, he built businesses to better understand their people, which I think is a really fascinating way to build Audigy. And Mason has an incredible story of how working in a car dealership helped connect him with the same people who helped catapult his career, helped catapult his company. I think you're going to really enjoy his story. I think you're going to really enjoy his insight on how to make the most out of that first job and internship. Mason, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's a real pleasure.
So I think to get started, I love if you could just share your story of, I think from what I recall, you were like a server, and then somehow that transitioned into working for a Maserati dealership, and then somehow that transitioned into you meeting your business partner who helped you start Audigy and build what you're doing today. Is that correct?
Yeah, you have a majority of the right pieces, so really close. Nice work. In a nutshell, I'm originally from Arizona, and my family were all small business owners. And so growing up, formal education was not any kind of piece of our equation, but trade labor was. And we were either an electrician on my mom's side of the family, or my dad. We had a local antique shop, and he was a cowboy / antique dealer in the Southwest. And we had a family home connected to the antique shop. But what I watched was, every day I had the opportunity to see my mom and my dad engage with customers, but in a way to where it was so much more than selling a product. Like, there was this true level of relationship and this true level of connection, and this almost like this point of inspiration where they were excited to share whatever the story was about a piece of merchandise that turned into really more of a partnership or relationship with our clients at the antique shop. So fast forward, I wanted to be able, though, to push the envelope, and I thought, we deserve as a family to maybe expand some of our horizons beyond small business, and what better way to do that than formal education. Even though my dad was not necessarily a big advocate of me going away for what he thought was a very expensive commitment, when we have good jobs right now that we can step into without taking on any debt or any student loans. So I worked my way and found my way into the University of Portland up here in the Pacific Northwest. And I thought, after being in Arizona for 4 generations, I need to spread my wings a little bit and fly and check out a different part of the world. And what better opposite climate than going from the deserts of the Southwest to the forests of the Pacific Northwest. And I really fell in love with Portland and its culture and its community. So anyways, at University of Portland, I was going through, as many of us probably are, and thinking to myself as I'm sitting in these classes, what do I really want to do after I graduate, right? And, I'm taking on some debt, and I'm making a big commitment and getting this degree, but what ultimately, do I want to do with it? And some of the individuals that were coming and speaking at the university, their guest speakers, I felt were just, I couldn't connect with them. I just didn't really understand where they were 20, 30 years out versus where I'm going to be in like 12 months or 18 months when I graduate. So I went to a few career fairs, and I remember, as some of us probably do, right, you go to these career fairs and you have the speed networking, and you have big companies there, the big traditional institutions or organizations. And after probably 2 career fairs, I want to say, I just remember coming back to my room, and I was talking to some of my buddies or some of my roommates, and I just thought to myself, like, this can't be it. Like, I'm not inspired. I'm not excited. I just don't feel it. And if I'm going to take on 6 figures of debt, I really want to be fired up about what I'm going to do and what this diploma represents to me. So I went to my academic advisor and I said, hey, I think I need other options in the way of, finding some career opportunities. And he said, what do you mean? We offer the career fairs. And I said, I've been to them. I said, but honestly, like, they don't do it for me. Like, I'm not feeling it. And I don't see this level of like picture for me and my family and what I want to ultimately be able to do to these career fairs. And I remember him saying, well, they're good enough. Like, you should be grateful that we have them. And I went to my dean and I said, okay, I need to switch it up. So I went to my dean. I asked for a new advisor, and he said, you can't fire your academic advisor. So I'm not firing, just re-signing. So he re-signed me, and I said, ultimately, I love people. And I said, where do I go to new people? I want to build a network, to build a community. And it's about, hopefully me having more individuals that know stuff I am about. So build that 2-way street network. And he said, well, he goes, there's a place called Portland City Grill. It's a new restaurant that just opened up in downtown Portland. And between the 4 and 6, you're going to have more business executives hanging out for happy hour than you have anywhere else in the downtown Portland scene. And so I started taking the bus, the #1 bus from North Portland, down to the Rose Garden at the time where the Trailblazers played. And I'd get on the MAX, our light rail system, and I'd go to this restaurant. I'd hang out up there, pretend like I was in private equity, and try to meet people, even though I was a very humble beginning college student. And that led me to building a network, believe it or not, at this restaurant, Portland City Grill. And one of the key, I'd say frequent, associates of Portland City Grill, this gentleman named Spike Friedman, asked me one night. He finally said, "What do you really do?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "What do you really do?" Because I'm not buying it that you're in private equity. I said, Well, I'm a college student at the University of Portland. I'm doing my undergrad in business and trying to build a network here in this town because I'm originally from Arizona. And he said, okay. And he said, you know who I represent as far as the two families that he consulted for? And I said, yes. And one of them was a family that owned about 28 dealerships here in the Northwest. And I thought if I could get into the Ferrari and Maserati dealership of Portland, Oregon, I want to engage with whoever's spending $250,000 to $500,000 on discretionary product like a Ferrari, and maybe get somehow connected with them and start building a network with those individuals. So that's how it kind of worked out. An alternative approach, but it did all right.
I think that's really cool. I love that story. And I think that story is more consistent with how a lot of professionals build their careers. It's not linear. I think for any student that's watching this right now that thinks like, okay, cool, I'm going to get this degree in accounting, and then I'm going to get a career at KPMG, and then I'm working my way up to a partner, and then I'm going to have this, three kids, family, white picket fence. It's going to work out exactly perfectly how I thought it would, and then I'll retire. It doesn't work like that, and even if it did, you wouldn't want it to. It's way too boring. How you set up the plan isn't how it's going to work out, and it's not meant to work out that way either. And so what I really love about your story is this notion that you were open to opportunities. See, so often we can look at situations as this was the end of the world or this was a great opportunity. It just depends on the lens we look at it from. When that guy in that grill said, I'm not buying, you're working in private equity, you could have easily crumpled down and said, you're right, this is embarrassing, I feel awkward, and walked out. Not said a word about who you are, what you actually do. And I would imagine that a lot of people, that would be their natural instinct. But instead you said, you know what, I'm a student at the local university, this is what I'm doing. And you know what? He said, the mere fact that you're here and no other student is here. And I would imagine no other student was at this grill networking like you were, Mason. And you jumped on the opportunity to meet with other people. This guy was like, I got to hire this person. All right, I have to be influential of getting this guy a job because this kid is a winner. This is someone who wants to grab life by the horns and ride it, take it out. And that is enough for him to make a strong recommendation. And I think for any student that's watching this right now might be thinking to themselves, well, shoot, how am I supposed to set myself apart in this coronavirus period? You can't go to the restaurant per se because social distancing, but are there alternative routes that not many people are taking advantage of that you might think like, oh, that's weird, or like no one else does that? But it's like, in reality, why the heck not do that? Like, what do you have to lose? So I guess, with that said, Mason, do you have any suggestions for students as they're building and they're preparing for their first job and internship, how to get that ball rolling, how to really set themselves up in the best position to succeed?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think you have to come down, at least for me, I had a lot of perceptions that I was growing up with, right, within my family that, the antique business was good enough. Being an electrician was good enough. And we should just accept the fact that, this is the type of lifestyle or lack thereof in the way of resources that, we may not have just because of our environment. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know that it has to always be that way. So, what I started early on, and I would recommend this even, with my 4 young children, is to think about what are those legacy outcomes that ultimately you want to be able to look at your life's work and say, this is what I represented. And for me, personal freedom was big, right? I saw my mom and dad every day in that antique shop, or any of my family in their small businesses. They may have not been really lucrative. We may not have been the biggest in town, but there was a sense of personal freedom that was so powerful to me that it really resonated with me at a young age. So when I thought about where I was going to go and what I wanted, I had these legacy outcomes for me. And I would constantly think about that and that power of your mindset, even though technically we were a one family, car, and we didn't, we shopped at the consignment stores or the good, kind of the Goodwills of Tucson for clothes and things of this nature. We didn't have much, but I remember thinking like, I want to be able to provide for my family in a way that maybe my family isn't able to. And no matter what the stipulations are in my environment, I'm going to put myself in play to find that. So it wasn't just about finding an internship as it was, you're building this tapestry of relationships every day, every week, every month, every quarter. And the more people that I can truly and intentionally connect with in a very meaningful and authentic way, hopefully the more individuals I would have out there that would be like ambassadors or champions of Mason and what he ultimately wants to achieve in life. And when certain opportunities would come up in their world, I wanted them to think, you know what, there's this individual that I met, Mason, and he was really fired up about these three things. And he really seemed to understand, even at a young age, where he wanted to go in his life, to where when those moments presented themselves in my tapestry of relationships, I wanted them to think, I'm going to reach out and call this guy. And so as a living resume, it wasn't just something that I was submitting a piece of paper online for. And I was so surprised by how many of my friends would just wait until they're like, okay, in 90 days, I need to get a job. All right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to submit resumes. I never thought that way. And so as a result, when you build these relationships, this internship for me at the Ferrari dealership, it was another step in the relationships I was building. And the goal was not that I was going to go there to try to sell some Maseratis or some Ferraris. The goal was I wanted to go there to build more relationships, but relationships that intentionally were in environments that I might be able to plug myself into and find a way to be able to contribute or add value that would go far beyond what maybe Monster or whatever career site might be offering at that moment.
I think that's a really cool way of looking at pursuing your career path. I think there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom in what you just said. You know, one thing that I love that you just said was, did you say they were destiny outcomes?
Legacy outcomes, yeah.
Legacy outcomes. Legacy outcomes. That was such a cool word. I've never heard that term before, but it makes me think of a question I'd love to ask the students in our audience. What are the legacy outcomes you would like to have for the end of your career? Post them in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that. And by legacy outcomes, all I mean is, as Mason described it, when you look back on your career in 30, 40, 50 years, what do you want to be known for? Post in the comment section. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to have achieved? Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be field or industry specific, but it has to do with the feeling of what you want to have achieved and the impact you want to have made. Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that. I think the mere fact of setting this intention now can be such a huge, I guess, motivation, not necessarily motivation changes, but like an action driver of what opportunities you decide to pursue and take on because of what your intention is right now for your legacy outcomes. So post that in the comment section. I'd love to learn more about that. The other notion that I really loved about what you just said, Mason, was this idea of just being open and constantly curious and thinking about how you wanted. It wasn't about sending in your resume because that's how everybody else was doing it. You were thinking of the outcome that you wanted, and as opposed to subscribing to the strategies that everybody else was leveraging, you were opening your mind to what other strategies that could exist. And I think now more than ever, that is more and more relevant. LinkedIn, other tools that you could leverage to get yourself out there, especially in a time period where we really aren't having that many face-to-face interactions, is going to be what is going to land you not just a job, but the job, the career, the calling, the thing that really drives you and gets you to achieving your legacy outcome is going to be about who is able to put themselves out there in a different and more unique way. And right now, it's like it's Wild Wild West. It is the open platform. What are your thoughts, Mason, on that?
I think the hardest piece for any of us is too many of my friends seem to just be like going day to day, going week to week. And because it's this very transactional environment, right, where it's connections on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook, and it's a quick D something, then it's like, look at this as, if I pause for a minute, my success in life isn't because of the credentials that I have or the degree that I have, through the relationship I've intentionally created at every turn. And if those relationships are ultimately going to be my life's work and my annuity, right, to where they're creating my next opportunity before I even realize I need it or want that next opportunity, then I really need to understand, for me, I would say essentially, what is my product that I ultimately desire to represent? And that's what I kind of look at as many of us are still unclear with what our life equation is. And so if I were to sit with like somebody who's interviewing with me at our company and ask them, like, share with me your life equation. And they're, of course, what are you talking about? I'm like, just walk me through where you are, desire to go, personally, professionally, or financially, so I can have a better understanding of how we as a company can be a part of this chapter that you're writing today. But knowing the additional chapters that you want to write over the next 12, 24, and 36 months, I can help understand how we can be a part of that and writing the most beautiful chapter you've ever written with you. That awareness for me, when I'm sitting there interviewing with me, I don't have that. And they can't even articulate where they've been, where they are, and where they're going in their own life equation. Then I'm also understanding we as an employer or as an organization are really going to be able to fit or plug in a meaningful way in why they're potentially looking at being a part of our company beyond the role, right? Beyond the job description.
That's so huge. The clarity of what you want is so critical. I think as a student, to be clear about what you want is going to be, it's such a fine balance. I'd love to learn your thoughts on this, Mason, of not being, you want to be open to the opportunities that exist, but you want to be clear about where you're going. And I think a lot of students struggle with that, where they're like, I'd be open to this and I'd be open to that. Or, I'd love to connect with you, but I'm not going to really share why I'm wanting to connect with you. And the clarity isn't fully there. I guess the question I have is, how can a student become more clear when they really have no idea what they want to do with their life and their career? And two, what if they're like thinking to themselves, like, I don't want to fully commit to this one thing, because what if I end up changing my mind? Is it okay to change your mind?
Yeah. Well, let me share this. I grew up in an antique shop. My examples were essentially, my mom and dad and my aunts and uncles and my grandparents, and all of us own these small businesses. But I knew in my heart, right? Like I share with my own kids, I say, we each are born with this amazing gift, and it's called our personal legend. And our personal legend is your internal compass. And if you listen to that, right, it's your gut, right? It's your intuition. All of us have that. But it's collaborating then with that intuition, that gut, with your compassion, your heart, which you have, every one of us has, with our mind and our logic. And ultimately, at times, not always do we use all three, right? And this is what I share with my children. The art in this is, to me, I didn't necessarily know, right, that, I wanted to have a certain level of net worth, or I was going to be a certain title or role in a C-suite role in a company or what industry. But what I did know is I was constantly listening to the best guide and the best guide or compass that I have, which is my own personal legend, my gut intuition, combined with my compassion, and combined with my logic. And between those three, I could filter any opportunity. At least this is what I thought at a young age, right? And so my non-negotiables for me, right, were those legacy outcomes. Number one for me was my personal freedom. Number two for me was this concept of net worth, which was this idea that I had resources to be able to have at my discretion that I didn't have growing up. And then number three for me was to have an annuity. I never wanted to do anything for the sake of doing it. And what I saw with my family is we would do something and we would apply for a job. We would do something in a way of a title or a role, and we'd stay there for a year, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. All of a sudden, 10 years goes by in a nanosecond. And you look at where I was 10 years ago to where I am now, and it's a version of the same spot. And I would look at that and go, why? Does it have to be that way? Like, why couldn't I be incrementally moving forward every day to some greater level of opportunity? So for me, when I come back to this idea of these legacy outcomes, and I think about, for example, this opportunity that I have today and the life that I'm living, the personal or the legacy outcomes have never changed for me, ever. I mean, they stayed the course. But obviously, there's different scenic routes that I've taken. There's never been a perfect plan. And when you are listening to your personal legend, your gut, your compassion, and your logic, you'll filter out certain individuals, because clearly there's, like, I would say I had plenty of friends in my life that were like, Mason, you're a dreamer. You're too big of an optimist. Be realistic. And even some family like that, right? And for me, what I read was that was their insecurities that they're trying to place on me. And that's okay, right? That's their own prerogative. They think they're doing what's best for me. But I need to filter that. Like, I've got to be living so consciously aware of all the stuff that I'm being fed, all the noise that's out there, to be filtering it to make sure that in that moment, I'm making the absolute best decision for me, not for them or my environment or my family's insecurities, but for where Mason is going or where I want to go. And I don't know how I got off on that tangent. I don't remember your first question, so I'll pause there.
No, I like it. I think that's a very powerful statement. I think as students, especially students in ambition and motion, typically these are students that are just run it at a higher wavelength. Their aspirations are higher than maybe the traditional normal student. They are literally investing in themselves to get a mentor to help them take themselves to the next level. And that says a whole lot about your character and who you are. And with that said, it can be easy to surround yourself with other people that might not be as aspirational as you. I mean, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And when you're surrounding yourself with other people that might not be as optimistic as you, they might settle for, even your parents. By the way, your parents can be the worst when it comes to what is realistic versus what actually is realistic. I know when I first started Ambition in Motion, both my parents were like, Garrett, you should just go out and like get a normal job. And for me, I said, no, I want to build this. I really believe in this thing. And I was a bartender and server on nights and weekends to pay for rent because I believed in this company, this mission, this vision of the world I wanted to see. But the point I'm making is that it really does take you surrounding yourself with other people that can boost you up and not bring you down. And so I guess what I love to ask is all the students, who are people that boost you up? Post them in the comment section. Give them a shout out. You don't actually have to give them a shout. You don't have to link them, but just write their name in the comment section. I'd love to learn who boosts you up, who believes in you to aspire to your highest level. I'd love to learn about who they are. Post in the comment section. So Mason, with that said, I think we're kind of touching on this topic. I haven't actually specifically asked you this, but what is failure to you?
It's a good question. I don't ever think about failure in the aspect of not hitting a milestone or a target. I think to me, failure more than anything else is just, we all know and sense when we're not living true to ourselves, right? And there's a lot of pressure, I think I feel at times, where people's perceptions of you want to live up to or try to represent, depending upon what title you have or what your some of your employees or colleagues think about you. And so I think failure to me is not living true to exactly who I am. Like, it's not about the things I have. It's not about whether or not I don't have or I haven't attained all these great things for my family. It's just really, if I'm not whole here first, how can I contribute or give to my wife, to my kids, to my teammates at the company? So failure to me would be not living true to who I am. And I think, even when you take those judgments out and you're just truly living in your authentic self, I'm amazed at how many more people resonate with me when I'm more vulnerable and more, I'd say, just transparent in where my weaknesses as well as my opportunities are. And as a result, I feel I'm also, from a mindset, just in a phenomenal place when I wake up each and every day, being true to my core strengths or my legacy outcomes. So I'd say that would be my definition of failure, would be not living true to my authentic self.
And I think that can apply to anybody, not just if you run your own company. This applies to you and your own personal feeling of happiness within yourself. Like, what is the type of self you bring to your work? You're going to spend the majority of your waking hours at work. You might as well be doing something that makes you happy, that with people that you enjoy working with and doing things that you like to do. I think these are all things that you can have. I think this notion, this paradigm, this thought process of, well, work is naturally frustrating, or the reason why you have to get paid for work is because you have to do work that you wouldn't normally do on a normal opportunity. And I think the mere fact that you're using words like have to is already setting yourself up for failure. I think if you use terms like I get to work with these people, I get to do these tasks, I get to have these opportunities, you are setting yourself up for success. You're setting yourself up to enjoy the things that you do professionally. And I think that's a powerful notion. And so your definition of failure, I think, really rings true, especially with me. I would define failure as just giving up. But I think giving up can be easily redefined on the way that you put it, is just giving up on your own dreams, goals, and aspirations because you think you're living for somebody else, when in reality, you've got to live for yourself first.
100%.
That's cool. So we're talking about making the most out of your first job and internship. And I think these are very meta, like high level topics we're talking about here. But breaking it down, when it comes to actually making the most out of that first job and that first internship, are there tactics that we can leverage to know if we're on the right track or if we're not on the right track? Are there kind of like milestones or metric markers or telltale signs that we can look to see if, like, okay, things are looking good, or like this is a normal amount of adversity that I should be facing and it's okay because this adversity is going to lead to growth? Like, how can we tell that it's good adversity versus bad adversity?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple things, number one, all of my friends at the college level and the university level wanted to get a job with a larger corporation because it was safer, right? Like they were, in their mind, there was more guaranteed income benefits with a larger company than a smaller startup. And the way that I looked at it is, I love the idea of being able to go into a smaller entity or a smaller business and to be able to have more of an immediate influence and maybe not as much top-down leadership as it is ground up, right? So I chose to go the route of I was looking for something more entrepreneurial or small business oriented, right? Meaning a business with 500 less employees technically is a small business in the U.S. and now 31 million businesses. Like 98% of them are small businesses. So there's plenty of opportunities out there in small business. It was just a question of which small business was I going to try to connect with. And so I tried to approach it first from like a vertical or an industry that I really get excited about. And then when I opened myself up, and it's just like, let the right people come into my life. And when I find that right connection or that right relationship, I'll lean into it. And so I had a few clients at the Ferrari and the Maserati dealership in my first 90 days that were very entrepreneurial. And, one of them was going to be starting a new company, and I met him at an Applebee's, a very fine American establishment here in the Pacific Northwest. I met him at an Applebee's, and we shared 2 hefts and a basket of mozzarella sticks. And he shared with me this concept of the startup that he had. And it really just resonated with me. I felt the idea I can get behind and I could be committed to it. So his wife was kind of the first teammate, and I was our outbound caller, and she was our kind of like the events manager for whatever events we were going to have, and I was the outbound caller for what future calls we were going to make. And if you fast forward, I was 23 when we launched Audigy, and today Audigy is in the U.S. and Canada. We have 600 relationships that we service and support with a level of third-party business resource. These are independent doctors in audiology. We were acquired in 2016 by a public company for about $151 million, and I've been responsible for the integration of Audigy in the public company and then taking our model international. And when I look back at the last 16 years, I would say that all of us start out as a doer, just like I did, right? Where I showed up and I was a doer, right? I didn't have this tenure or these credentials or these resumes to be able to live off of. And if you look at the last 16 years, I've had 8 different roles, including the one that I still serve in now. Not one of them I ever asked for. Not one salary opportunity did I ever request. And my equity that I had in the company, I never put out there as something that was, like I had to have this or I was out. All these things came to me based around me, I would say, influencing the greater good of the whole, right? And so what I mean by that is we start out as a doer, and we either choose as a doer to move to a performer, which is I go from just doing the job to performing the role at the highest level of capacity, right? Once I do that as a performer, then I can start to become a connector, right? I can start to build relationships with other people, and they want to see and understand how is it that you're achieving what you're achieving, because good was here. You're now achieving this. So now I start becoming a connector where I'm having people come to me for recommendations, advice. If I move from that connection and intentionally start to replicate and share those best practices and help others attain that same level of greatness that I was attaining, now I start to move from a doer to a performer to a connector to a replicator, and then ultimately to an innovator, where I started creating more solutions. Because every business has problems, right? Every I would say market has needs that they're trying to solve. And if you could be a performer who moves to a connector that becomes a replicator, you now can start to innovate. And when I started to innovate solutions, people were coming to me saying, Mason, we have a new department that we want to launch. We'd love for you to be a part of it. would you be willing to launch this new department? And as a result, in my career, my success was based around helping others attain their success. And as a result, everyone was always thinking of you and wanting you to be a part of whatever they did next, because they saw that you took 3 people, 6 people, 9 people, 18 people to greater levels of outcome than just yourself. And so I moved from being an employee, where I would say practically an asset, or a liability, not an asset, to being a replicator, which is now to me somebody in a corporation or an organization, an asset. I mean, I'm creating 3, 6, 9 other individuals that are attaining certain success, and it wasn't through title; it was through influence.
Man, that's a great story. That's a great show of becoming literally invaluable. I mean, that's literally what you were able to create for yourself, Mason, which is extremely impressive. And I think for a lot of students, they might think to themselves like, "Oh, I'm not an entrepreneur. Like, I don't know how I could do that." You could just do, essentially, when you get into your career, take ownership of it. Don't just treat it as like the company's asked me to do XYZ task. I'm just going to do it and then go home. Think about how it plays into the bigger picture of the company, and step into opportunities, not tasks, but opportunities to move the business forward. Because if you can, and if you do, and if you're acknowledged for it, you will get yourself to a position where you are just crushing it in your career. You will literally be on fire. You'll get to a point where you are the painkiller, not the vitamin. And by the painkiller, not the vitamin, I mean your skill set, your work, your essentially thing that you provide is so valuable that without you, your company would be in pain. Whereas if you are vitamin, with you, the company's doing better, but without you, they're not going to lose sleep over it. So the point I'm making when I'm saying be the painkiller, not the vitamin, is make yourself and literally wed yourself into the fabric of your company and the work that you do, that even if situations don't work out with your current company, the customers that company works with see so much in you that they're going to say, "Hey, I will swoop you up in a heartbeat if you're a potential free agent on the table."
Yeah, and if I was graduating right now and I was interviewing somewhere, and I just showed up and I talked about my resume. My resume is limited at best in what I've essentially been able to achieve or do at this stage. But if you switch the conversation, you ask a Garrett, share with me what your ultimate vision is for Ambition in Motion 5 years from now. Like, you could share with me ultimately where you would want to be and what you see for Ambition in Motion. What would that look like? And I'm asking you this as somebody who's interviewing with you. And you share that vision with me, and you articulate this awesome thing that you're going to go out and achieve. And if I asked you today, what percentage of confidence do you have that you have all the tools in the toolbox right now that you need to execute on that? You might say 60%, 70%. I still have this other 30% that I need to work on, this other 40%. If you ask me, as somebody who's interviewing with me, Garrett or Mason, identifying that 40% that you have a gap in, what is it that's really keeping you up at night? That if you could have somebody that's fully committed, fully invested in everything they could to solve that gap, what would that be worth to you in investing in that individual for them to be able to achieve the solutions necessary, and taking you from 60% to 100% confidence that the next 5 years, you're going to absolutely nail and execute on. And if they said, if you asked me, if you were having this type of dialogue with me to where you were creating a solution for our overall need, even though I'm not interviewing for the president of the company, right? I'm here to help, but I'm thinking bigger in that context. And you flip it to me where I don't think any of us should ever interview for a job. Like, I'm always thinking 2 or 3 plays ahead, right? Which is why I asked that question, because I'm coming in here, but my dream is that I'm going to be here. And traditionally, maybe that role or that opportunity takes 5 years. I want to see if I can't get there in 2, right? And so if by knowing the additional vision that you have for the company, I can then understand how do I plug myself in. And by asking the right questions, people start to look at you differently. You're not there because of the resume. They start to look at you as you are a bigger thinker in understanding how you're going to create a movement, not a job, right? And in business, right? Businesses don't move people. People move businesses. So if you can go into your role not looking at it as a job, but how you're going to help create a movement within this 4-wall that's never been created before because of some spark that you bring and the way that you perceive or look at this opportunity to contribute through others, not through title. Woo! I'll invest in you all day long.
Yeah, that's so funny. I literally just interviewed a guy for a role with Ambition Motion, like right before getting on this recording with you, and he did a great job of that. I scheduled 30 minutes for the interview. It went for like an hour and 15, and it was a great conversation. He did a great job of conveying exactly that. And I've been interviewing a lot of people. I've been very patient about this hire, and I'm like, oh wow, like this is what it feels like for someone who actually does that. I don't feel concerned about investing my time and my resources in this person because I think he's going to do an incredible job. So, I mean, hopefully he accepts our offer. But the point I'm making in all of this is that, I totally see what you're saying. And as a student interviewing for a role or putting yourself out there, thinking about that is critical. So it makes me think of one last question for the students. What is your dream career? Where do you see yourself in 5 years that you'd like to be in too? Post in the comments section. I love to learn about it and learn about where you'd like to be in 5 years. Mason, this was awesome. This was really cool. I liked this took the conversation in a different direction than what we've historically gone in, but I really enjoyed it because I think we talked about a lot of awesome aspirational components of really what we should be thinking about with our careers. And if it's not, if any student is watching this right now and they're thinking to themselves like, well, I want to be a little more realistic about like my aspirations and careers, take a pause break, rewatch this entire thing one more time, because I think you really need to like reinforce your brain that what you dream, what you're passionate about is realistic. It is possible. I mean, shoot, Mason, you're like the living embodiment of it. I mean, shoot, you have a family history of family that didn't normally go out and get education. They were questionable about you pursuing your education at Portland, and you ended up owning that experience, going to the restaurant, meeting different people, taking advantage of the opportunities to work for a car dealership and eventually start this company and eventually build your business to what it is today. Whether you were an entrepreneur or not, for any student that's thinking like, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur, that's okay. You can still be an entrepreneur. You can still be a leader within your own life, but grab it by the horns and take full advantage of it and recognize that your investment of time is an extremely valuable investment. If you're not spending your time intentionally, you might want to reconsider the way that you're spending your time. And I think, Mason, you did an incredible job of conveying that message. So thank you. This was awesome.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's truly it's an honor, right? I mean, I feel very grateful for this beautiful life and the quality of life that I have to live. And I think the reality is it didn't happen because of somebody who promoted me or a university that gave me a diploma that simply said, now you will be successful. It was a choice that I wanted to intentionally live, but live through doing good with others and for others. So, my closing thoughts are, really think about those legacy outcomes that you want to have in your life. Think about that personal life equation that you want to live by, of where you've been, where you are, but where you want to go. And then ultimately reprogram your operating system, right? This right here. And in doing so, you will then come back to center with that personal legend that I was referencing, with your gut intuition, your heart, and your compassion, and your mind, your logic, to filter out those individuals in your life that you're going to come to contact with that maybe aren't helping you incrementally grow and move the dial to where, to me, that responsibility lies with each and every one of us to take advantage of what's here and put yourself in play, because you're a phenomenal product, or at least I believe each of us are born with this beautiful product that exists in all of us, and it just needs to be nurtured, developed, and brought to life. So Godspeed.
That's awesome. Mason, how can our audience learn more about you, connect with you, learn about your work?
You can ping me on LinkedIn or Instagram, and I'll share that with Garrett if he hasn't already. I don't know what he's posted up there, but on Instagram I'm just at Mason Blue Walker, my full name, and LinkedIn should be the same. So Garrett, I'll send it over to you to make sure you have it though.
That's awesome. Yeah, and our students are very active on LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll probably get a handful of LinkedIn connection requests from this. Mason, this was awesome. This was a great workshop this evening. Everybody, this was incredible. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here this semester. Really enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you all next semester.